Well, good morning. Good morning. I'm glad to be here with you this morning. If this is your first time at Risen City, I want to say a special welcome to you. My name is Mike. I am one of the leaders here at the church. It's awesome to be in church with you guys this morning. I do hope everyone is doing well. I don't just say that. We do take time to pray for you throughout the week, praying that God would bless you and keep you. But we do know something, that life has a way of not always working out in the way that we hope it would. Right, can we just be real? Sometimes we come to church and we're coming in off not necessarily the best week that we've ever had. Right? Sometimes it's a hard week, a hard day, a hard season. And the cool thing about churches is that we believe that the church is the perfect place to be if that's how you feel. That this is a church where you can be actually not okay, and that's fine. And that's all right, that you can come in and be real and authentic and understand that for those of us who are maybe coming into church on the best day, hey, we'll celebrate with you and we'll be excited for you. And those on the worst day, we will mourn with you and be together with you because the grace of God invites us to come as we are, whatever season, whatever place we are, and receive His life. That in fact, we would say it like this, that in all seasons, we believe what our souls need is just more Jesus. And so we want to be a church that allows that to happen in all times, in all places, in all of our services and connect groups and things like that, because we don't want to create just more religious moments, right? We have enough of those in our life. We want to create times of genuine encounter with the God of the universe, to be a church that leads people into a soul-changing relationship with Jesus, not just a nice little Sunday morning moment, but soul change. We believe that He can do that in us. He can affect us and change us, move us, and shape us. And so we're excited to be doing that today as a church. I want to invite us into that. And one of the ways that we do that here at Risen City is through this thing. It's called the Bible. As a Christian, we do believe that this word is not some old and antiquated ancient book that needs updates and revisions and edits to make it palatable and relevant for today. We believe that this is a good word from our God to us for our joy, for our flourishing, for the good of our souls. And so when we open it up, we want to sit under it and allow it to challenge us and change us, lead us, guide us, and instruct us and encourage us. And so we're going to do that a little bit today as we continue in a series that we've called Cultivate. And it's a series that ultimately is going to be focusing in on how to cultivate or intentionally build, like you would a garden, right? A healthy home around marriage and family and things like that. And we've done some foundational work in the last few weeks because what we believe to be true is a very simple thing, but yet so profound its implication is that you can never cultivate health around you until you've cultivated health within you. That what happens in here is going to leak into life. And so we've taken some time to set that up in the last few weeks. And today we're going to begin to turn our attention towards this thing of romance, of relationships and whatnot. And I want to speak into that for a bit. And so if you do have a Bible, I want to open this up and start us off in the book of Song of Songs. If you're unfamiliar with the Bible, then let me help you understand where we're going today. Because one thing you might not know is that this book that we're about to read out of was at sometimes considered a forbidden book of the Bible. In fact, there was a time in church history where men under a certain age were not allowed to read this book because whether you know it or not, it is an erotic love poem. And there's some things in there that probably want to keep away from some young men's minds. But it's beautiful and it's wonderful because it's a celebration of love ultimately within the marriage covenant. And we're going to look into it today because there's this constant warning that comes up. And I wanted to piece that a little bit out for us today. So we're going to read from chapter 2, verse 7. And this is one of the instances of this warning that comes up. Chapter 2, verse 7. And this is what we read. I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, all the single ladies. That's what she's saying. By the gazelles or the does of the field, that you not stir up or arouse or awaken love until it pleases or until it desires or until it's in its rightful place. You know, one of the best things about this season of life that we're coming into, known as, spring, summer, and fall, right? That whole weather patterns that are about to come is in my opinion at least, having fires. Anyone with me? You enjoy having fires, right? I love doing that, and especially because usually when you have a fire, it's with some good people, right? It's with some good food. Hopefully, right? Not always good for you food, but good food. I'm a s'mores guy, right? Your little chocolate and marshmallows and graham crackers, little pieces of heaven on earth, you know what I'm saying? Or for me, this might be gross for some people, but like there's only one instance really in life that I will gladly eat like 5 hot dogs, and it is open fire. Like cooking, I don't know if it's like smoke mixed with chemicals, just make this nostalgic moment, but like I will eat so many of them, put ketchup, mustard, relish, the whole deal, and just consume them. And it's just a good thing. It's just one of those little joys in life that at other times would make you probably puke when you know what you're eating, but like in that moment, it's good. Right? It's just good. But and growing up, we would go to like camping trips and my grandparents, a trailer, and this is where we'd have our fires. And my brothers and I, we would always like, I don't really know what's going on in our minds, but we would always pretend in the fire that there was like a hero having to escape. And it was usually like Tarzan or something like that, and the jungle's all burned, he's got to get out, and we'd create these little imaginary stories of him jumping from like log to log and branch, and we'd make up this whole narrative, and we weren't crazy, so we always escaped, right? He got out, he didn't die, we weren't like psychopathic, want to see Tarzan die every time, like he got out always, but we'd always just create these little moments, and then we would try to help, my grandfather or my dad build a fire to sort of set up our scenes. But because my grandfather and dad were wiser than us, they would never let us really help build the fire, because kids, poking and prodding fires, because we would sometimes, I don't know if your kids do this right now, if you have kids, like they'll take a stick that's on fire and be like, Dad, look, right? And they'll like throw it around because, kids are like that, right? And sometimes my grandfather would even use, some fuel to help get things going, right? So having kids around that moment helping set up wasn't the wisest thing to do. So they would keep us away from it, because as we know, in a moment like that, as glorious and as awesome and as life-giving and food cooking as fire can be, right? Its beauty is matched with the same kind of potential for destruction, right? That if that fire got out of the pit, out of the barbecue in its wrong place, the fire that was once beautiful is now quite destructive and scary. And some of you know that back in September, my wife and I experienced this when our dryer lit up, right? Because I normally love fire, but in that moment, I hated it, right? It was just this weird moment where it was scary, it was horrible, it could have burnt the house down, but normally I love it, right? And the same is true of love. I want you to understand this today, that in its rightful place, love is beautiful. And it's awesome, and it's glorious. It's a gift of God. But outside of that place, if our heart is not wise towards it, it can cause as much destruction as it is beautiful. And so there's a wisdom that we have to have as we approach this conversation. So when we come to Song of Songs, as I said, it is a celebration of love, especially of the sexual variety. It's a husband and wife and their story. It has flashbacks to when they first meet, they know each other, to their wedding, to what happens, after a wedding, and it's quite some detail. If you want to know about that, I had to do a whole paper on it in school. It was quite awkward, but I did it. It was wonderful. I made my mom edit it too, which was really funny. But regardless. But through this whole thing, the woman, this is the woman, the beloved she's called. And she takes time in this narrative, because she's the primary speaker actually in this poem, and she takes time every so often to stop what's going on and turn her attention to her group of single girlfriends, right, that are all there and watching her fall in love and watching her in this relationship, and she wants to warn them about something, right, because they're all trying to find their man and have that whole moment, right, they're all consumed by that thing, and so she looks at them and says, guys, or girls I guess, in this case, don't play with fire. Simply put, don't awaken love in the wrong place. Understand its direction, understand its context, and in that space, then do that. She's speaking to something that we need to honor and understand, that there's a passion, there is intoxication, there's a beautiful thing in love that can overtake us so easily, and she's trying to warn us against it. Not that we would not ever experience it, but that we'd experience it in the rightful place. Because sometimes when we can get caught up in love, we end up making some foolish decisions. And she's trying to look at these young women and warn them a little bit and just say, hey, in the right place, in the right context, in the right direction, this passion, this love, this fire that is burning is awesome. It's glorious. It's God-given. But like a spark in a dry land, so can love be to a heart unready for it, unprepared for it. And so there has to be a wisdom that you and I bring to this thing called love, to this idea of romance and relationships and all those different things, because we have to understand that there is a warning to be understood, to be heeded here today. And she calls out and says, ladies, and then by virtue of application, every person who is single, be aware. understand. Don't let it consume you. Don't let it overtake you, lest you make some decisions you don't want to make. Lest you go to some places you probably didn't want to go to. And I don't know about you, but I would wager that most of us have made some dumb decisions in pursuit of love. Like, can we be honest? Like I'm not getting into the whole story, but like, I could say that, I definitely got into a car accident trying to impress a lady, right? And it was before I met Emily. It wasn't Emily. A month later when I did meet her, I was way more mature by then. I learned my lesson and I obviously won her heart. But like I've done some dumb things in this thing called love. And so I want to take a moment. I want to take some time today to begin to dig into this a little bit and speak to our community as a whole. Speak to our community as a whole, because here's the thing, is whether you're married or you're single, right? If you're part of a community of faith that interacts with marrieds and singles, then we should know how to mentor, how to love, how to speak into the hearts of one another. So I want to deal with this as a whole community, speaking to this time of life called singleness, just for a little bit. Because one of the things that you and I often forget, or maybe just completely miss in our modern culture, is that seriously, the most important decision you will ever make as a human being that will impact your joy, your flourishing, your calling, your success, after deciding whether or not you'll follow Jesus, is who you will marry. More time, more energy, more emotion gets invested into this one relationship than anything else outside of Jesus. And so making sure you do it right is pretty important. Which means this, and this is sort of the big idea for today, that if you were to ever want to cultivate a healthy marriage, it starts before you ever have one. That the way you cultivate your soul in singleness, the issues that you do not deal with, the wounds you don't try to bring to healing, the things you let lay dormant become the foundation upon which a weak marriage gets built. In the grace of God, He can strengthen that, He can fix that, He can forgive that and make it strong again. But we have an opportunity as single people today to build deep and well, so when we get to that point of marriage, it's actually strong. Which is why the first 2 weeks of the series were so important. Because if you do not cultivate your soul, you will not be a good spouse. Just simply put, right? And even now, we know it's true that to be the spouse your marriage needs is to be someone looking more like Jesus. That's it. And so I want to take some time to really speak into this, because what we need to understand today is that singleness as a season of life is not like a death sentence that some people treat it. It's an opportunity to be stewarded. That we, hear me today, that we should never disdain the season of God that He has ordained for our preparation. That singleness becomes a season of life that God wants to prepare your heart in. And so as a community, as a whole body, as we grow in faith, as we grow with single people in our midst, as one day our kids, right, we'll enter that space trying to find spouses and be those single kind of people. I want us to understand the dynamic of this as a whole, that we as a church honor all the different stages of life and know how to speak into it well, and especially this idea of singleness, because I've found, I don't know if you would reflect this or not, that in the church, right, there's often this subtle double standard about single people. That on one level of it, I've heard it said before in different churches, that if you're single, there's somewhat of this like less qualifiedness about you, that you haven't really lived quite yet. You're not really ready to lead some things that are important because you haven't sort of learned relationships and these dynamics. I've heard pastors and people talk about how, if you want to hire someone, hire a married person. There's this preference for the married stage of life. And don't get me wrong, there is wisdom and experience that you gain getting married. And we're going to jump into that next week. But all I'm saying is that Jesus was single. And I'm pretty sure He fulfilled a pretty good ministry. Like I'm just putting it out there. Like I'm pretty sure He did a good job at that, right? And so then we'll try to put this thing out to single people. Like you need to get married and grow up, and that's part of the stage. But then it's interesting because then when single people start talking about how they want to get married, we will tell them, stop obsessing about it and don't be so spiritually deficient. And so either way, either you want marriage and you're less than, or you don't want marriage and you're less than. So single people just sort of get screwed all around, right? And so I want to make sure we understand this today, because that's not how we want to treat our single people, right? Because I want you to understand that there's a God-given desire to want to be married. That's not a bad thing. It's not a sinful thing. In fact, one of the first things God ever said to humanity was, it's not good that you're alone. And then He makes a wife, institutes marriage. Right? At minimum, we are made to be in community, to be together, to reflect the sort of communal nature of the Trinity in our relationships, but definitely in this thing called marriage, to be fully intimate of body and soul with someone for a lifelong covenantal commitment that reflects the love of Jesus. That's what he made us for in a very real sense. And so what we need to begin to understand is that when we are in a season of prolonged singleness, Paul wrote that that's actually a gift of God. It's a special spiritual ability because for the average person, that's not their life. In fact, for the average person, right, prolonged singleness becomes the abnormality. For the general human being, especially in the church context, right, you are probably going to get married if you're not. Right? Some would say up to 90% of people at one point are going to be married. So that's most likely everyone in this room is going to want to be married, going to try to get married, going to be married, some to glorious marriages, some to not so good ones. And it's our job as a church to equip at all stages of life to create the best kind of marriages that we can. And so we need to be able to speak into some of these issues today and make sure that we understand that the desire to be married, single people, is not bad. So don't hide it. It's fine. God gave it to you. It's part of who you are. When my daughter starts talking in 25 years from now, when that she wants, like, that's a good thing. I want her to want to be married one day, long time away. But it's true. But here's the thing, right? Here's the thing: is what that means then, though, is although there is this desire to be, and by the way, as well, we should as a church want single people to be married. We live in a culture where marriage is somewhat disdained. It's seen as this sort of like punishment on relationships, that somehow the joy gets sucked out of it once you get married. That's not what the Bible talks about with marriage. It says let it be held up with high honor. That we should want to be in that. Young guys, you should want to be married and not run from that kind of commitment. We should want to be in those spaces. Right? But here's the problem. Is because there is a desire built in by God, and we are broken and sinful people, we will twist it. And often that means that the desire for love can become the idolatry of it. And this is what we have to begin to understand. And idolatry, by the way, is the idea of worship. That I begin to worship the idea of a relationship, or even worse, the person that I'm in a relationship with, that somehow they get elevated beyond just being a human being to almost like being a God, a savior of my issues, a completer of my soul. I don't know if you ever watched Even Stevens growing up. Anyone watch Even Stevens? Right? I love that show. Lewis is like my boyhood hero for many different reasons, not to get into it today, but I love that man. He was amazing. I know he was fake and not a real person, but there's one episode where he wants, I think it's like this scooter thing, and it's in this glass case, obviously, as a part of this competition, and he comes up to it, and he starts making out with the glass, right, which is sort of weird, but he's Louis Stevens, and then he looks at it, and he draws his heart with his hands and says, "You complete me." It sounds stupid, does it not? Like, why would you say that to a scooter? But we do the same thing with people all the time. We'll approach relationships as if I have one, if I'm in one, then I'm complete. Then I'm somebody. Some of us will treat a relationship as a safety net against our loneliness. That if I'm with somebody, then I'll never feel alone. If I have them there to tell me I'm beautiful, then maybe I am. If I have someone who will say that they love me, then that's good enough for me. At least maybe I can be someone who is lovable. If I have someone who's lying beside me, I never have to feel by myself. I never have to feel like I'm going to be abandoned. So we go from person to person to person to person, never really able to be alone because we're afraid of it. Or the first person who shows us some affection, whether or not they're wise to be a spouse or not, we will jump in 2 feet deep and just get into that relationship because I want to make sure I get that person secured in my heart, and we'll begin to treat these relationships as if they can deal with my issues. Or sometimes we'll even elevate the people. That they become essentially like a God to me, that they're supposed to know how I feel. They're supposed to know the right things to say at the right moment of time, exactly what my soul needs. And when they don't, why wouldn't they know me? It sounds almost selfish if you think about it. But this is what we begin to do. And what we have to understand today, what we need to get, and even married people need to be reminded of, is that spouses make horrible saviors. Horrible saviors. Why? Because they're human. Can we just be real? Right? We are messed up at times. selfish at times. And there's no possible way in the universe that I'm going to know exactly what my wife needs to hear at all times and speak the right words at the right moment with the right tone and the right volume and the right space. Like, there's just no way I can do that, right? But if I expect that out of a spouse who is sinful, who is broken, who is sometimes a little bit selfish, who is human, I'm going to be utterly disappointed all the time. But that's not what they were made to be. Spouses were made to be complements, not completers. So why expect them to be more than that? And here's what we need to understand is there is, right, as cheesy as it's going to sound, there is one relationship that's supposed to be the place of your completion. That there's one relationship that person, right, will never hurt you, will never disappoint you, will always speak exactly what your soul needs in every moment, who will never leave, who will never forsake, who will never abandon, who died because he loved you, and his name is Jesus, not your spouse. In fact, your spouse, hear me today, isn't even going to be the safest place for your soul to run to. Jesus is. And that's why the cultivation of your soul is the most important piece in marriage and family and everything. Because if that becomes deep and that becomes strong, if you know who He is and how His grace speaks into your heart, that He becomes that safe place, then you are equipped to be strong in your relationships. But if not, you'll be constantly seeking things out of your spouse or your relationship or your partner that they cannot actually give. It's actually unfair to treat them with godlike expectations when they're only a mere mortal. Right, so we have to begin to see this, because at the end of the day, marriage does not fix your issues. Like I know some of us believe that if I just get married, then I'll have this issue resolved. Then my problems might go away. Then my daddy issues are going to be healed. Then my loneliness is never going to happen again. Then my porn problem, it'll just stop. The problem is it won't. It just gets exposed as deeper than what you actually believed it to be. And that's what we need to begin to understand as single people, especially, that if you're not cultivating your soul now, it's not just going to get fixed because. It actually gets worse. Because now you have a mirror to live up to that just looks you in the face every single day and reminds you, I'm not who I need to be. And God uses that to make us holy. It's actually a good thing. But I need to get my soul to the place where I'm secure fully in my God and allow Him to begin to heal some of those things. And so what I want to do today for the rest of our time is I want to speak somewhat in light of this warning from Song of Songs as both a pastor and somewhat of a dad, if you would allow me. Like, I have a daughter and a son. Right? And everything I'm going to say for the rest of my time is things that I'm going to say to them many times over. But I want to speak it into our community, because I believe this, that as a community of faith, it is our job, right? It's our job to come around everyone who's present and speak life into their situation. That whether you're single or not right now, whether you're married, right, I said, one day your kids will be single in that space of life, and you have to mentor them and give them wisdom. If you're single right now and you're part of a connect group, then we need to be able to know how to speak well into those situations. So I'm going to give us some thoughts and some ideas on how we can speak well into singleness to cultivate a soul that's ready to be a spouse. All right? And so ultimately what that looks to, I'll give you the whole answer first, is number one, I want to push you towards cultivating your soul while you're single, obviously, and submitting your life to Jesus. That's the heart of the issue. Who do you follow? Because whether you're married or you're single, right, that is the single most important question. Who do you follow? What defines relationships for you? And so I want to make sure we understand today that singleness is a God-given opportunity to cultivate your soul. It's to be stewarded and not run from. Don't wish it away when God's given it to you to actually prepare you. All right? And whenever I'm talking about this, especially like on one-on-ones and coffees and things like that, this question that I'm going to answer first inevitably always comes up. So at Risen City, we don't shy away from any topic. So what about sex? Right? People always ask me, well, like, I'm single, what's this whole sex thing? And here's the thing, is the answer is so complex, but yet so simple, right? And we're going to get into it a little bit more next week when we talk about marriage, but the answer is simply this: no. When it comes to singleness and sex, the answer is simple, and it's no. And it's no, right? Because when we are single, and when we are married, by the way, we submit our sexuality ultimately to King Jesus, who, by the way, died a virgin, and you would probably argue was the most complete human being ever, right? So sexuality and satisfaction aren't the same word, right? Sex and love aren't synonymous, right? Sexuality, hear me today, is an amazing, glorious, beautiful gift of God. The church has done such a bad job with sex that it's made it seem like it's dirty and it's gross. We need to hide from it. We should be good with sex. That was a weird way of saying that, but right, like it's part of what God made. It's what He called very good. Right? And so it's good for us. In fact, it's a gift of God. He's the one who saw Adam and Eve and made them naked. Just putting it out there. Right? Never mind, but I'm not going to dig into it. So what that means for us today, right? What that means for us today is I know at times when Christians talk about sexuality, it can seem somewhat restrictive. But I would not call it restrictive as much as I would call it sacred. That there's something deeper here that we're talking about. That we fundamentally don't view sexuality as transactional but covenantal. That your body, yourself, is not a pleasure-based commodity that I trade for affection and for closeness. But you are a soul to be cherished, loved, honored, and pursued. And intimacy of the body is a reflection of intimacy of the soul. That I am to be one flesh, God calls it, together for forever. And this reminder of my covenant with you. And in our view, sexuality is so much more beautiful and so much more deeper than what we often make it to be. That this isn't actually about a pleasurable experience. It's about reminding me that I'm one with my wife. That we are one person. That it's not Mike anymore. It's Mike and Emily. And whenever I get with my wife, it's a reminder of my covenant that I'm with her. Right, so we view sex as a very sacred and honored thing within the covenant of marriage. And so if you're single, right, here's the answer. It means you're celibate. No amens on that one? Right? Our stance is simple, that when we are single, we are celibate, and when we're married, we celebrate. Amen on that one, all the guys. And ladies too. You're allowed to, I mean that one. Just saying, the woman was the speaker in the whole erotic poem. Putting it out there, right? It's good theology. But this is why I want to say that out loud to us today, because it's this idea that maybe, just maybe, that the guy who invented it, right, who designed our bodies with parts involved, right, whose idea ultimately was pleasure, might have some things to say about how to maximize the satisfaction of it. And if I were to believe that his way is right, I'm going to actually find more joy in the pursuits of my heart his way. And statistically, by the way, married sex is better. So put it out there. You don't believe me? Go look it up. Right? There's actually, never mind. Next week. Right? The point is this, right? As Christians, we have one yes, marriage. Everything else is no. It's not that complicated. Sometimes hard. Can we be real? It's hard. It's not complicated. And so there is a difference there. Now. When we are talking about looking for a spouse, and we're talking about this idea of cultivating myself before, and we also have to realize that there is the process. I got to go find a spouse eventually. I got to go do that. And so as Christians, Paul writes in 2 Corinthians 6 that we are to not be unequally yoked, which means in this context that you should be dating in faith, not outside of it. That when you're looking for someone, the first qualification is always, do they love, serve, and honor, and know Jesus? And you might think that sounds a little like non-inclusive, right? But it's actually very practical and theological. And even if you're not a Christian, pretty wise. Why? Because of this. If at the basis of your identity, the basis of your worldview, your philosophy, the way that you view life, the highest aim of your heart is to love, serve, and honor Jesus and hold things to live in His upside-down kingdom around money and family and time and church, to be about the mission of God, and they don't, there's going to be some tension. Just like there's going to be a little bit of a difference there. And here's the problem. Inevitably, in that kind of dynamic, you will have to be you'll be forced to be choosing between honoring them and God at some point. And you will often justify the concession to honor them above God, which, by the way, isn't cute. It's idolatry. Right? It's actually a sinful practice of putting something above the highest aim of your heart. And so in pursuing that, right? We even practically speaking, right? Like what happens when you begin having children? And you believe, right, that it's your prerogative as a parent to teach your kids the things of God, to raise them in the knowledge of who Jesus is, of the church is, of what grace is, of what sin is, of what heaven and hell are, and understanding these things, but they don't. Then do you listen to your spouse or teach your kids? Or just when it comes to understanding about how we view time and church involvement and throughout the week and what's the most important thing. Like if we have two fundamentally different theologies, philosophies, and worldviews, there's going to be some tension automatically built in. So why do that to yourself? Practically speaking. Right? And so Paul does mention that people sometimes get married and then one gets saved, and then he does say that the spouse who gets saved should stay there and love and honor and serve that person. But here's the question, is why put yourself in that place when you can do it right from the beginning? To align myself around what we believe about Jesus. Because hear me today, the best spouse will never make you compete with them for Jesus. It's not going to happen. They're going to push you towards Him. They're going to partner with you to actually pursue Him even deeper. They're going to make you want to be like Jesus and honor the fact that you love God more than them. An immature spouse will be like, look at me first. And practically speaking, we don't talk about this enough in church, right? I don't know why we don't ever get to this kind of level of conversation, but also, right, like sometimes we should have the conversations around even our callings. Because here's what I found, right? If you feel called to be like a missionary in Japan or something like that, and the person that you're dating wants to be like a lobster fisherman or something in Newfoundland, right? Those things don't go together. Like those are opposing callings, right? There's got to be some flexibility, right? But if like he's all about being a beef farmer in Alberta, right, and you want to go to Africa, those aren't going to work. But yet I find that we never talk about that till we're too deep into our emotions, and now I don't know what to do, and I'm going to give up my calling to pursue this person that maybe I was never supposed to be with in the first place. Or how about even just kids, right? What if they want 6 and you want 1? That's a big difference, right? It's a big lifestyle trajectory that it's not the same. And here's what I want to give permission today to our church, to the single people, right? And as a church supports you in this, you need to have permission just to take people out for coffee and have a conversation, right? And not think that because you went out for coffee, a ring comes next week, right? Like it's okay to take someone out for coffee, because hear me today, as cute as all the Snapchats are, that's not the place to build a relationship. It's not, right? It's not going to take you through the rough patches because you know to send a nice cute snap to them, right? It might help some of the jokes, right? But friendship is. And so I want to challenge the young people and to the single people, like take someone out, man, buy their coffee, stare them in the face, look them in the eye, have a conversation. Get to know them. Ask them some of these questions. It's not that hard. Sometimes a little scary. I remember. I was there. But you need to do it. And sometimes you just have one of those moments where the veils come off and you see, she's the one. That's how it happened with Emily and I. Took her out for coffee. This little hair moment, I brushed her hair back. It's like, I'm done. It's it forever. That was like our first date too, so it worked out for me. I'm just putting it out there, right? It worked out for me, maybe for you too, right? But seriously, take someone out. Have permission to go on coffees. Don't call it a date. Call it a conversation. I don't care what you call it. Talk to people. Like text messaging. What was it? Like, I would say 1 month there's at least 5,000 text messages we sent to each other, right? That's not a relationship, right? I don't even know what to call that. Immaturity, right? But like, or weird dependency. I don't know what that is, right? But we need to like spend time with people. So I want to give that because I know that sometimes in the Christian world, it's like if you see someone going out for coffee with someone, you assume they must be dating in this serious relationship. We're just going to take that away from our church and be like, hey, if you want to go out and meet somebody, have coffee, do that. We might make fun of you because we love you. Don't do that. I shouldn't have said that. But still, right? Too late. I'm going to edit that out. I'm just kidding. It's not. We are in perfect church. It's all part of the package, right? And so make sure you're taking someone out for coffee. But here's the thing. When you decide to date, when you decide to actually go and make something, like I don't know what we call it now, right? Because it's like, I remember anyways, I'm not going to get into it. Whenever you decide to have a serious relationship outside of just going out for coffee, whatever that is termed nowadays, right? Here's what I want you to know. This is something I'm telling my daughter and my son every single day that they go on a date. The same thing, the same advice, and it's simply this. Date on purpose, not to practice divorce. Because see, this is what we have to understand today, that the common practice of I'm going to get real deep and intimate with you and then separate and break up and cry a little bit, then learn how to get over it, then go do it again and again and again, right, does not train you to be a good spouse, but to be a good divorcee. Knowing how to be intimate, close, get really tight with you, open up probably a little bit more emotionally and spiritually, even physically than I should, and then learn how to run away from that and not be affected by it anymore. That does not teach you how to be a good husband. But how to leave when it's hard. How to protect yourself from intimacy. How to fake a commitment. So I want to say that breakups are inevitable in our dating culture. Don't get me wrong. It's not a bad thing to break up because some of us need to. Right? It's this pattern of rapid intimacy and separation over and over and over again that literally trains my heart how to just be separated when I'm married. A piece of paper in a ceremony is not going to change my disposition towards divorce. So date on purpose. Date with the intention of finding a spouse, not just having a nice little time out. Like if you can date, doesn't mean you should. Right? Date with an intentionality built into it. And just realize that there is time involved in the relationship process. Like I used to make fun of people in high school, you know, when they would like date for 5 minutes and tell each other that they love them, right? Everyone would make fun of those people, right? But yet we do that all the time. It's like the first thing that we say in a relationship must be that I give you everything. That's not a relationship. That's childish. We need to get beyond this kind of thing and realize that there's responsibility to our future spouse. Hear me today. Your future spouse will gladly and feel so much more honored if you love them even now by choosing to date as if it's them in the relationship. Like you need to think about the future relationship that you will want to have and live in a way that honors it right now. All right, so when you're dating, make sure that it's on purpose. But the next thing is this: character always wins. Character always wins. Because here's the thing: the Bible says this, and it's sort of a classic sort of Christian line, but it's actually pretty powerful. It says this: that beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Right? Like it's cheesy a little bit, right? You're not going to get it tattooed on your body somewhere. Hopefully not. If you do, you're probably 26 and have it on your shoulder blade, right? That's probably how it goes, right? But here's the thing, right? It's true. It's true, right? A pretty face is not going to get through a hard time. Right? Having a nice, cute little smile is not going to make it through the rough patches when marriage is tough, right? Having some charm and some abs are not going to be great when you need to get through a season where everything is falling apart. Right? What you want is to find character, to find the fear of the Lord, to understand that there's something deeper there that I need to be pursuing and finding, that I find somebody who's committed to grace, who's committed to love, who's committed to forgiveness, who's committed to being selfless, who has the character traits of Jesus, who, hear me, has cultivated a healthy soul. That's what should be attractive, the health of someone's soul, not the shape of their body. Now, don't get me wrong. Right? Don't hear what I'm not saying. Like, attraction has to be part of the equation, right? Like, if you're not attracted to your husband or your wife or your person that you're dating, like, that's probably a problem. Like, that is an issue because there should be a level of the kind of love that is attraction-based, we will call it, right? But it's not the highest priority. Because those looks will fade eventually, right? Dad bod happens. It's just a reality. Right? And you got to adjust your definition of what good looking is at sometimes, right? Hey, amen. Right? One day, I'm probably going to be bald, right? And Emily's going to have to love bald guys. That's just what's going to have to happen, right? But here's the thing, right? We have to understand that character is what we want to pursue because that's what we need to have. And so, the question, or not the question, I should say, my thought for you today is find character and ultimately don't settle. Don't settle. Find someone who's not a gossip, who's not a liar, cheater, someone who takes responsibility, who loves Jesus and will love you well, who's good with people, who cares for you, who's growing, has integrity, it is kind, and is patient. Like girls, seriously, do not settle for the charming guy who fills his mind with porn all the time because it's not going to stop and you don't deserve to be the object of his sexual desire only. And just because he tells you it's going to stop when we're married and we have sex, he's lying to himself and to you. It's not worth being degraded every time you're with him as he thinks of a woman you cannot compete with. So don't bother. Don't be his savior. That's between him and Jesus to work out. If you're not married to that man, get away. And guys, if drama follows her before you get married, it's going to follow you into your house. Right? Don't settle for someone that you can see their health of the soul is not growing. But, it's interesting to me, especially in the Christian world, right, that in the pursuit of trying to do that point well, people will create a list so long that not even Jesus himself can live up to it. Can I be honest with you? I've had coffees with some single people, and they literally bring out a book of their list so long that it's bigger than the Bible itself. Like, it's literally shocking to me sometimes how our standards get so full. But here's the problem. Here's the issue, is I found that those people also can never find anybody. Why? It's a simple point. Because they're trying to demand out of a spouse something that they aren't willing to live up to themselves. It's called hypocrisy. Right? I'm too lazy to cultivate it in me, but I'm going to demand that you do that. And hear me today, this might be a hard word. If that person existed, they'll have way more options than probably you. So what does that mean for us then? It means simply this. Cultivate the list right here, and maybe you'll attract the list you're hoping for. That you need to become the person that the list describes, because they will be attracted to that kind of person. And hear me tell you, here's the best piece of advice I can give to single guys, and especially to the married men in the room today, right? The number one turn on you have is called character. I want you to understand this, right? In Song of Songs chapter 1 verse 3, the woman speaks, and she says this, I want to be with my guy. And by the way, that didn't mean like go out on a coffee date. Like, it was, I want to take him. And I believe it says couch. Go to the couch and have some time together, right? But then she says, why? She says, because he has a good name. Which means this, because he has a good character. That the man that he is his greatest attraction to my heart. Guys, do you have a good name? Do you have a good character? You want to be an attractive young man? Grow up, be a man of integrity, and have a good character, have a good name. That's the goal. Married guys, if you want your wife to desire you deeper, become a better man. Simply put, right? That will be the greatest attraction that we have, which means ultimately this, that we need to take time, especially in our singleness, to cultivate our soul. That is the goal. That's the desire. That's the point. God has given you a season, hear me today, where you have less responsibility towards family and a marriage and more opportunity to cultivate something deep within you. So don't waste it and wish it away. Take the time to cultivate a soul that will one day be a worthy spouse. This is the point. That even Paul says that in singleness you have an opportunity to focus more on the things of God. So for all the single people in the room today, right? Do what we talked about last week. If you weren't here last week, go listen to it. The principles of spiritual disciplines. You have more time right now to do those things, to put it in, to serve, to give, to be like Jesus, to cultivate and pursue the calling of God on your life. Do that. Do not waste it wallowing and thinking, I just want to get to my next place. God ordained a season of preparation for you. So just live in it, own it, work it, be content, give, serve, and cultivate. Then you'll become the spouse that you need to be. So here's the thing, man. You guys can come up. We're done here. So at the end of the day, cultivating a healthy marriage starts before you ever have one. So I'm going to challenge our single people today. Start cultivating your singleness. Just do it. Don't waste this opportunity. And I want to make sure this question gets asked of us as we end our time today is ultimately whether you're married or you're single, the same question comes to hit you right in the heart today. What is the most important relationship in your life? That is the question you need to answer. What is that relationship? Because if it's not Jesus, hear me today, you're going to be disappointed. You're going to be hurt. You're going to be let down because people are people. And we're not perfect. Your spouse will never be that. So if you're in the room today, who is the most important person in your life? Who is that? Because if you're waiting, if you're desperately waiting for Prince Charming to walk in the room, he's not gonna. Because you have to understand marriage and relationships really are romance at work. It's not some soulmate that just all of a sudden lights up your life. It's choosing to give everything I am to the good of this other person. But that can't happen if all I'm expecting out of them is to do everything for me. You'll never be healthy enough to be a good spouse if you haven't had your soul made well in Jesus. So I want to challenge you today, if you're in the room, if you're still waiting to be filled, if you're still waiting to be completed, if you're still dealing with some of those loneliness issues, God hears it. He knows it. He made your heart. He understands it. And so He died to make you whole. Right? Because though those feelings linger, not because God is not trying to fill them, but because sin is making them stay there. The perpetual brokenness of our soul, right, keeps us at bay, keeps us distant from God. But He has made a way for us to be whole in Him when we come to Jesus. And so the question really becomes, are you willing to lay down your loneliness, lay down your expectations, pursue the King of Kings, and allow Him to do the process of healing the wounds that you carry? Because you have them. Like we got to just own it. All of us have some wounds that we have to deal with. I sort of say it tongue in cheek a lot of times, but we all have some dad wounds, some father wounds that we don't ever really want to deal with that affect the way we have a relationship. Some of us have seen a marriage go bad so many times that we've given up on it. Some of us, all we've experienced is bad relationship after bad relationship, and so we've just consigned ourselves to the place where that just must be how things go. But today there's a better story. There's a better hope. That there's more flourishing that can happen, that marriage was meant to be beautiful. In fact, it was one of the 4 things God called sacred before the world went into the fall. Does your marriage feel that way if you're married? When you think about marriage, as a single person, do you view a marriage that fulfilling? So beautiful, called very good by God. That's what God wants for your life. If you're single in the room today, I want to challenge you. Don't settle. Cultivate. Don't wait. Don't wait. Steward it. Steward it. Your spouse will thank you one day. Your future self will thank you. Your kids will thank you. Cultivate the health of your soul while you're single, because then you'll become a spouse who's worthy of marriage. And married people in the room today, may I remind you that your spouse is not your Savior? Don't expect them to be. Allow them to be broken. Be their partner. Be their complement. Be as safest place as you can be. But realize that Jesus is still the place you need to run to. If you're in the room today, and you're still one of those people who haven't kicked the porn addiction yet, still struggle with some of that lust stuff. Today's the day where healing can happen, where addiction can break. But you got to come to Jesus. He is the source of our soul's healing and wholeness. Can I challenge you today to be honest with God? Because here's the thing. Here's what I have found. That some of us aren't brave enough to follow Jesus because we still love our sex way too much. That to give that up seems too scary. Because what might that mean for my affection? What might that mean for my pleasure? What might that mean for me? Hear me today. Jesus is better. And to continue in that place puts you at odds with God. He is so much better for your life. See, there is hope in Jesus that relationships can actually be what they're meant to be, beautiful and glorious, lifelong and flourishing. But it starts, single people, by cultivating the health of your soul right now. Can I challenge you to do that? As sort of a dad pastor, challenge you to do that. If you're married and you're feeling the weight of a weak foundation, there's healing for you. That can be rebuilt. If you and your wife, you and your husband would come, lay before Jesus, and give Him the marriage back. Would you stand with me? Would you stand with me? I want to pray for us.